Okay. Hi guys, welcome to our short lesson on inverse functions. Now, I know at this point you've watched 3 videos from Khan Academy explaining some of what inverse functions are, but they looked mainly at linear examples. We'll still look at one ourselves, but we're also going to look at a non-linear example, like you should have seen the inverse of x squared with the activity or GeoGebra. So, we got 2 examples here. They're essentially a 4-step process for finding the inverse functions. You will find that typed out in the notes that are also provided that go along with this video. So the first step is we're going to change f of x to y. We will then switch our x and y values. We will now solve for y, and after we solve for y, we replace f or y with f negative 1 of x, or f inverse of x. So what it means for something to be an inverse of another function is it's the opposite function. And what we mean by opposite is our x and y values are flipped. So for any x comma y pair that makes this function true, for its inverse, we're actually going to get the opposite ordered pair. So like in this function, the ordered pair, let's see, 2 comma 3 is in this function. So the ordered pair 3 comma 2 would be its inverse of that function. So we're reflecting over the line y equals x, and we'll look at that in the calculator. So, here with this, the first thing I said I need to do is replace f of x with y. So I can rewrite this, y equals 4x minus 5. Once I do this, x and y need to flip. So I'm going to say x equals 4y minus 5. Now usually we like to write our equations y equals, that's how the calculators tend to like them. So our goal is to get y by itself. So here I see 4y minus 5. The minus 5 is the first thing that needs to go. So let's add 5 to both sides. Those will cancel out, leaving me with x plus 5 is equal to 4y. Now I need to get rid of that pesky 4 in front of the y. In order to get rid of that 4 in front of the y, we're going to divide. Now, one thing I'm going to say here is for a problem like this, I'm going to work smarter, not harder. When I divide by 4, I'm just going to divide this entire thing by 4. Now, I could write this as like 1/4 x plus 5/4, but honestly, this, though it looks a little big, is an acceptable way to write your answer, and quite frankly, just out of ease, I'm going to leave it like that. Now the final thing I said we have to do is write it technically as f inverse, because this function and this function, though inverses, we're not actually saying they're inverses right now. In order to say that, I want to utilize f inverse, so I'm going to put the negative 1 there, of x is equal to x plus 5 over 4. So that is my inverse. So, like I said, in order for them to be inverses, technically you need to, or you don't need to, but we are going to check that they are inverses visually by seeing that they reflect over the line y equals x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in this function, this function and y equals x. So let's start with the first one. So our first function was y equals 4x minus 5. So right here we see this function. Now let's graph the inverse. The inverse said, what was that? Y equals, now since it's a fraction, I want to hit division right away. I'm going to put x plus 5 in the numerator. Click down here in the denominator and put 4. So we see those two functions. If I finally add y equals x, oh, that went into the wrong function. That would really change things up. X right here, we see that purple line. If we look closely, you'll notice this teal and orange line do seem to, if I was to reflect across the purple line, that yes, these would fold onto each other if I reflected, or they would fall on top of each other if I reflected over this line, meaning that yes, they are inverses. Now, linear functions, it doesn't look as interesting. Now, I know that's where a lot of our focus was. Right now, we're going to look at example number 2. Just to give myself more space, I will erase this example, but this can also be found in those notes I provided you. So what we're going to do is say, example 2, that was 3x squared minus 7. So we are going to do this the same way. All we have to do is just be careful about how we have to take care of that x squared. So first thing I want to do is replace f of x with y. So y equals 3x squared minus 7. So, okay, let's switch where x and y are. So now this is going to say x equals 3y squared minus 7. Now, what's going to happen here is this squared is going to work just a little bit differently. We can handle it, though. We've seen how to take the opposite of squaring something. I'm not going to give it to you right now, but think, what's the opposite of squaring? My goal is to get the y squared by itself, then we'll talk about what to do from there. So again, let's add 7 to both sides. So that's going to be x plus 7 is equal to 3y squared. Now, I want to get rid of the 3 in front of the y squared before I deal with the squared part. So we are still going to divide here. My work's going to come up here, giving me y squared is equal to x plus 7 over 3. Now, how do we undo squaring something? Well, to undo squaring, we want to take the square root of both sides. Now, for the visual purposes, I'm going to put a positive square root and a negative square root inside the calculator so we can see that reflection. But the squared and the square root cancel out and leaves us with the square root of this whole thing. So I want all of this inside that square root. So my f inverse of x is equal to the square root of x plus 7 all over 3. So now I'm going to again go to that calculator. And I am going to retype these equations in. So I'm going to do 3x squared minus 7. So notice that is turning into that parabola. This one is going to be a little different looking, so let's delete all of this. I'm going to first do square root, then put the fraction inside there. So in the, oh, I didn't hit fraction, I hit a minus. Divide by, there we go, now I'm a fraction. I said x plus 7 in the numerator. X plus 7 all over 3. Now notice it only looks like it's half the shape. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to retype this with a minus sign in front to give the other half of the shape. So negative square root of x plus 7. Put the 7 there. X, come on. All over 3. So settings, I'll make that all one color. There we go. So if we look at this, the teal U shape and the orange U shape again appear to be reflected over this line y equals x in purple. So visually, this is what it means for them to be inverses. If I turn off the orange for a second, we would imagine flipping this over this line to get us those pieces. And hence, they are reflected over this line y equals x. For any xy pair here, you're going to see the opposite. So I hope this video was helpful in understanding what inverses are and seeing how to deal with quadratics. Now we're going to ask you to do a small amount of practice of quadratics on Schoology, so please make sure to give those problems a try. If you have questions, also please make sure to let us know. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day.